Hello, thank you for joining me. So in this video I'd like to show you a little bit more about our switch plate. And this is our fourth video in our series, how to put together a reasonable representation of a switch plate that would be used in a typical residential application. And what we've done so far is we had our base, we had our side chamfer put in, our hole cut, which is going to be there where the switch actually comes out in the middle, and then we put in our hole wizard holes, which help define some of the holes and the screws that are going to be associated with those holes when we finally get this mounted. What we need to do next is we need to hollow this out a little bit. It's always good when you're dealing with plastic injection molded items that there's a consistent wall thickness. That way it cools correctly and it doesn't provide as much in the way of warpage. So the way to do that, one way to do that, is the shell feature. It's a very handy way of doing it. What we're going to do is we're going to select the face and give everything else a certain wall thickness, excluding that one face that we select. So if we go to shell, it'll typically revert itself, or as by default, will go to 1/10 of an inch. But we're going to change that to 50 thousandths of an inch, or 0.05 inches. The way you do is you work your way from the top down to the bottom. This blue box, as you remember, is asking for a selection in our modeling area. So it's asking for faces to remove. We're going to take this face and we're going to remove it. And you'll see that there's an icon on our mouse. If we right click on the mouse button, or go over here to the green check mark, it'll rebuild for us. And what that does is it shells out everything that, except for that face. So anything that protruded in that face gets a wall thickness, including our hole wizard holes and that center hole that we have for a switch, as well as the edges over here. Now, if we go back to this shell and kind of play around with it, we can select different surfaces in here. Not only that face, but we can maybe select this face, this face, this face, and this face, and maybe this edge over here, and see what the results are going to be. We go to the green check mark, and it kind of does what you would expect it to do. It provides no wall thickness over here. It's just a straight through hole, and it only provides a short wall over here. It provides a kind of a wall thickness to the to the cut that we had there, all the way down to that point. And then down here, it gives us a full wall all the way through. In fact, that wall surface goes all the way up to the front plane, because remember, front plane resides right on that face, this face, and that face over here. So we can go back to the shell and change that one more time, just for the fun. But let's go ahead and remove one of these faces on our on that switch plate, and go back to rebuild and see what that looks like. Oh, I think we removed the wrong face. We want that face. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and reselect these, but not select all of them. Let's just select maybe those two over there and see what happens. Yeah, so kind of predictable. It does have a wall thickness on two sides of that cut in the middle, where that switch is going through, but nowhere else. So, yeah. The shell will provide you with various different options in here. If you want to clear some selections, if you right-click in that blue area, go to Clear Selections. Let's go ahead and reselect that and go back to our original setting. So last thing we want to do is we want to put in a rib. So what we want to do is kind of put in a rib feature in here that'll go between maybe this boss over here to that cut, and maybe from this hole cut down to this boss, and then from this hole cut over to the edge, and the same thing on that side. The way the rib works, it's based on sketches, but you want to make sure you do your sketches first. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's go to the Sketch tab and go to the Line command, and we'll just start drawing in some elements in here, some sketch elements. Now, there's a couple different faces we can choose. We can choose this face, or that face, or that face. It's all the same face, or we can go over here to our Feature Manager flyout and click on the front plane, because they're all about the same. They're all the same surface. They're all they're all coplanar with each other. So we can choose face or front over here, and we're just going to start drawing and sketching in some of these lines. We can use all existing geometry. For instance, we can go from maybe the midpoint of that rectangular cut, that hole cut as we called it before, and go up to that edge of that circular feature. Again, we'll do the same thing on the bottom. So we'll go from the midpoint of that hole cut, and we're going to come down here to that edge. You can't really see that very well, but when you're making a pre-selection, when your cursor is resting right over that edge, it's going to turn orange and let you know that you're going to be selecting that. And we can establish that relationship down here too. You notice that right next to that, it's going to hurt to see, but in yellow you have a suggested sketch relation which is going to be created when you finally drop that line into place. So if you think about these lines we've drawn in, we haven't drawn any dimensions in here, but the lines are fully defined. They're fully defined because the element that's just below that is fully defined too. And that's fully defined, and you put your elements in there that follow that, like our sketch elements in here, considering some of the geometry that's already existing there. Because the base element is fully defined, our sketch elements are going to be fully defined too. So one last line, let's go from this midpoint over here to that midpoint over there, midpoint of that edge to the midpoint of this edge. Now we should be in pretty good shape. And just to demonstrate something down here, you notice that our sketch 8 down here is going to have a negative sign to it, which means when we initiated this sketch it was underdefined, but it will be fully defined if we rebuild this. So let's go ahead and rebuild this. Sketch 8 now becomes fully defined, and every sketch we have associated with our model so far is fully defined. If it's not fully defined, that's a test question. If it's not fully defined, it will have a negative sign to it. And if I were to take that relationship off and still have that blue dot at the end of that line, if I go ahead and rebuild that, underdefined. Right click on that, go back to edit sketch, just drag that back over here. It will now be fully defined, rebuild, and now we're in pretty good shape. Okay, let's go to rib. Feature tab, rib, is going to be looking for a sketch. So we're going to click on one of our sketch elements over here, or scroll down to sketch number 8. And the first thing it's looking for up here is an orientation of that rib. And the way a rib works is you're going to provide a thickness of that line, and then the lines are going to go down or up to wherever the next selection is going to be. So right now it's pointed up, so it's going in the wrong direction. It'll fail on us if we try to do that. But you also want to keep in mind of your thickness and orientation. So our orientation, we do want a middle orientation here, so we want just as much material on one side as the other. You can see the yellow preview of that, how thick that's going to be. But we're going to make that a little bit thinner. We're going to make that 0.05 inches. So we're going to make it a little bit thinner of a rib. And you'll notice that the preview of that changed too. And we're going to make it 0.05 inches. That's what we need to identify up here. We're also going to make a draft to this. Now typically in the plastic part you want to put drafts in. We didn't put drafts in on our shell. Now we'd have to do that as a separate element. That's a separate feature. But we're going to do it here just for practice. And maybe about 3 degrees. So what it's going to do is it's going to have its original thickness up here, and then it's going to get a little bit thicker on the bottom by 3 degrees. And if we do that, I go to the green check mark. As I promised, it is going to fail because it's not going in the right direction. What it's looking for is it needs to take that rib and go down to another surface. It needs to terminate at another surface. So we can change our direction by clicking on this button. Parallel to sketch. Oops, not that button. Sorry about that. That will actually change its orientation too. So it's going to go, it'll go off in this direction or in that direction over there. That's not really quite what we want, so we're going to go back to the orientation, but we're going to flip that. So we're going to flip to the material sign. So this is the button you use. A lot of times when you're using these features, when you have these features in here, you'll have a reverse button right next to it. It's a little bit different animal with a rib. So we want to flip material side. And now if you go to the green check mark, now you see our rib. And if you look at it from the top, you'll notice it does have a little bit of a taper to it. It does have that draft. So that concludes our model. That includes everything from our base feature to our side chamfer, our hole cut in the middle, to our hole wizard holes, to our shell on the back. And we'll call that our back shell. We're going to go ahead and rename these. And that should conclude our model. So our rib 2, since we already played around with that, sequentially gave us another number there. But we're going to call that also our back rib. And since it's more than one rib, we're going to make that parallel, or not parallel, but we're going to make it plural. So that concludes our model. There's going to be one more video, a real quick video. We're going to show you how to put all these sketch elements into one sketch in order to help you drive all the features of your design. So please join me with that video.